Welcome to our presentation of the 2020 Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary Faithful Steward Awards. I am Alton B. Pollard III, President of Louisville Seminary. The Faithful Steward Award is the highest recognition for an alum or friend of Louisville Seminary who has made a noteworthy seminary-wide impact, sets a standard of excellence that is an inspiration for others to follow, or has supported or directed fundraising for a specific seminary priority project. Faithful Steward Award recipients are those who have gone above and beyond the call to duty in providing the resources that enable Louisville Seminary to deliver quality theological education. Today's Faithful Steward Award recipients magnificently meet that criteria, and it is with great thanks that we honor these four individuals for their exemplary commitment to Louisville Seminary and commitment to their own witness. We continue to be blessed by their ministries. Our 2020 Louisville Seminary Faithful Steward Award winners are Devaisher, Irvin Moxley, Morgan Roberts, and James Tinsley. Please join me in celebration of these wonderful individuals.
Pastor Karen Devaisher, also known as PK, received her Master of Divinity degree with honors from Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary in 1992. Devaisher's ministry was characterized by encouragement, compassion, and faithful pastoral care and mischievous humor. She was a champion of missions, visiting countries on several continents. Serving her community was a lifelong priority for Devaisher, including board service at Fletcher Place, IU West Hospital, Otterbein Franklin, and Mental Health of America in Hendricks County, among others. She served as an ordained elder at Rockport First, Grandview, Frimmers Chapel, and Avon United Methodist Churches. After her retirement from parish ministry in 2012, Devaisher served as Associate District Superintendent of the Central District of the United Methodist Church through 2018 and served as interim pastor at Bethel United Methodist Church. A longtime donor to Louisville Seminary, Devaisher often gave to the seminary at the President's Circle level. She also committed her time and talent to the seminary through her service on the Louisville Seminary Alum Board from 2004 to 2010, as well as her service on the President's Roundtable from 2017 to 2019. In 2013, Karen received the Louisville Seminary Distinguished Alum Award in recognition of her commitment to ministry and service. She also received the Lydia Award from the Commission on Status and Role of Women for her support of women in ministry, the Denman Evangelism Award for exemplary obedience to the Great Commission, and a key to the town of Avon, Indiana, for her service and contribution to the Avon community. Devaisher died on December 14, 2019, following a short illness. Accepting the Louisville Seminary Faithful Steward Award on her behalf is her daughter, Leanne Bevan.
On behalf of my mom, Reverend Karen Devaisher, my family and I would like to express our sincere appreciation to Louisville Presbyterian Seminary for the Faithful Steward Award. I am deeply honored to receive this award on her behalf. I believe she would have been humbled by the recognition because of the high esteem she held for Louisville Presbyterian Seminary. This community was pivotal and foundational in shaping my mom's ministry. Louisville Presbyterian has a vision to build bridges. This vision became one my mom quickly adopted and embedded into her own ministry. Her vision was to share God's love and grace with everyone. She was influential in shaping lives for the kingdom. She spent much of her life working in the church. She began as a Sunday school teacher and church secretary. Through her church work, serving on committees, hosting and volunteering for church events, serving on mission trips, her leadership grew until she began to pursue full-time vocational ministry. This led her to earn her Master's of Divinity through LPTS. Upon her graduation, her later years of ministry were centered around building congregations, shepherding both churches and their communities, and helping many others to discover their own call to ministry. She mentored other pastors, served on community and conference boards, and above all, she loved people. The epitome of my mom's ministry was loving and serving people both inside and outside the church. This was embodied in her ministry in 3 foundational beliefs: the abundance of God's goodness, the power of prayer, and God's love for everyone. These beliefs were passionately woven into her ministry from beginning to end. Her belief in God's goodness was tangibly displayed in multiple ways, but very prominently in the sacrament of communion. Everyone was welcome at the table, and in coming to the table received a hunk of bread as the body of Christ. My mom firmly believed God never gave crumbs at his table. She also displayed his abundant love and grace through her generosity of time and availability to her congregants, her gifts and service to the community outside the church, and her ability to influence both her churches and others to fully support and fund missions, both local and abroad. My mom wanted everyone to experience and understand God's lavish generosity and abundant grace. My mom proclaimed these foundational beliefs in a responsive saying that was always interwoven into her services. My mom would begin with, "God is good all the time," and she expected everyone to respond with, "All the time, God is good." She believed this with her whole heart. She demonstrated this belief in her life. Closely entangled with this affirmation of faith was her belief in the power of prayer. She gifted almost everyone in her ministry with a clinging cross. Whether she counseled you, mentored you, served you, prayed for you, you became a recipient of the clinging cross. My mom wanted others to feel God's presence and his power in a tangible way, and she wanted others to know that God is steadfastly good, even when life is difficult. The final embodiment of my mom's ministry and her biggest ability to build bridges was her hugging. My mom was a hugger. COVID would have put a big cramp in her ministry style. Every service or meeting ended with friends and strangers alike greeting her and getting enveloped in a warm embrace. She was well known among the people, especially at her churches, for her hugs. Mom wanted others and those she visited or counseled to experience God's love here on earth. In Les Miserables, Victor Hugo wrote, "To love another is to see the face of God." This was my mom's legacy, loving others and allowing them to see the face of God through her. For this recognition of her contribution to God's kingdom, my family and I are deeply appreciative of this Faithful Steward Award. My mom loved Louisville Presbyterian Seminary and believed in its vision. She felt she had the best education and the best foundation for her ministry. She was impacted significantly by her time, her relationships, and her interactions on this campus, and she held the seminary very near to her heart. Though she is no longer with us today, her influence, her legacy live on through the people she loved, the people she served, and the bridges she built. Thank you again for honoring my mom, Reverend Karen Devaisher, and for the recognition of a calling and a ministry well served.
Reverend Dr. Irvin Moxley's more than 60 years of commitment to ministry and service to the church and community has been and continues to be exemplary. The second African American to graduate from Louisville Seminary, Dr. Moxley earned his Master of Divinity degree in 1959. He returned to his alma mater to earn a Doctor of Ministry in 1974. A Howard Thurman scholar, his doctoral thesis was an examination of the mysticism of Howard Thurman and its relevance to black liberation. Following his graduation from Louisville Seminary, Moxley served as director of the Presbyterian Community Center. For more than 10 years, he served as associate executive of the Synod of the Covenant, where his responsibilities included relating to the Synod's racial, ethnic caucuses, as well as developing modules for multicultural ministries in the Synod's inner cities. Dr. Moxley retired in 2016 from Brookwood Presbyterian Church, where he was part of the first tri-pastorate arrangement in the Presbytery of Scioto Valley, which includes 104 churches. It was made possible after recent revisions to the Book of Order, part of the Constitution of the Presbyterian Church USA, that gives presbyteries more leeway in creating pastoral configurations. Throughout his ministry, Dr. Moxley, a Louisville native, has remained close to his alma mater. He has been a loyal and generous donor to Louisville Seminary for more than 35 years, particularly to the Westminster Moxley Scholarship Fund, which was established in 1996 by the Presbytery of Transylvania upon the dissolving of the Westminster Presbyterian Church. This scholarship is named after the Westminster Presbyterian Church, an African American congregation, and Dr. Irvin Moxley. Dr. Moxley also served on the seminary's alum board from 1978 to 1982 and on the Board of Trustees from 2004 to 2012. From 1973 to 1974, Dr. Moxley was a lecturer at Louisville Seminary, and in 1997 he received the Louisville Seminary Distinguished Alum Award. It is with great thanks for his exemplary service that Louisville Seminary honors Reverend Dr. Irvin Moxley with the 2020 Faithful Steward Award.
It is with joy and gratitude that I accept the honor of being named a Faithful Steward of Louisville Seminary. My relationship with the Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary began in September 1956, when I was enrolled as a candidate for the Bachelor of Divinity program. I was the first African American seminary from the Presbyterian Church USA, that was a northern branch. I accept the Faithful Steward Award in thanksgiving and in the hope of my enslaved ancestors. Dr. Thurman, who prayed and wrote in his Undoing the Coast of Africa, best expresses this thanksgiving. Oh, my fathers, and I've included, and mothers, what was it like to be stripped of all supports of life, save the beating of the heart and the ebb and flow of fetid air in the lungs? In a strange moment when you suddenly caught your breath, did you have some intimation from the future? Did it give your spirit a wink of promise? In the darkness, did you hear the silent feet of your children beating the melody of freedom to words which you would never know, in a land in which your bones would be warmed again in the depths of the cold earth, in which you would sleep unknown and alone? I accept this honor and gratitude for my family of past and present generations. Being a Black Presbyterian was not a new experience for the Moxley family. In 1910, the Reverend Dr. William M. Wolfe, 1863 to 1941, and his wife, ruling elder Hattie Fleming Wolfe, 1873 to 1936, moved to Bowling Green, Kentucky, to establish the Bowling Green Academy, a school funded by the Board of National Missions of the Presbyterian Church USA. Dr. Wolf was a graduate of the Lincoln University and Theological School. He was the principal of the academy, and Hattie was secretary on the board of trustees. Wilfred Irvin Moxley was my father. Married the eldest daughter, Helen May Wolf, and they were joined, of course. And I am the oldest son, and my brother, deceased, was the younger of their two children. My daddy was a Presbyterian elder, and was that until the time of his death. Ruby and I are natives of Louisville, Kentucky. Being Black in America presented not only challenges, but encouraged in us an active hope for social justice. We refused to stay in our place as defined and assigned by a racially segregated society. We joined hands with all our brothers and sisters, Black and white, who have smashed and continue to tear down hostile dividing walls that stand in the way of our becoming the beloved community. I received the Faithful Steward Award, giving thanks for the embrace and the enduring love and companionship of Ruby. She did not expect this biologist's husband to be called to the ministry. 64 of our 65 years of marriage was her being wife to a pastor and mother of our children. Today, we are a 4-generation family. Helen and Lori, our daughters, Suzanne, Rachel, and Stuart, and Brandon, our grandchildren, Ruby Grace Branson, and Bronson, our great-grandchildren. They are always on call to address the needs of their aging grannies. Their love provides us with courage to live fulfilling lives as we wait for God's next calling. In receiving the Faithful Steward Award, I remember with gratitude the gifts of the Louisville Seminary family. I came to the seminary as a seeker, wrestling with the meaning of life, not only in general, but specifically the meaning of my life. The question about meaning and purpose of my life was indeed an urgent concern. My graduate advisor in biology has suggested that my quest might be better dealt with in a theological seminary. It was the learned and compassionate faculty of the seminary that rekindled my faith in the God who is good all the time. Each of the faculty members opened their homes and their hearts to Ruby and I. The seminary infrastructure was changed, and sensitive action was taken to do what must become truly a multiracial and multicultural theological professional institution. For all I can name all the faculty members and their importance in molding my life as an individual and my life as a pastor. But I just want to name a few. It was Dr. Julian Price Love, professor of English Bible, who invited me to his office to hear and discuss my assigned book reports. And this was an opportunity for what Thurman called contact to become fellowship. He was not only a prophetic teacher, but also a pastor. When my family moved into a formerly all-white neighborhood, he was there as pastor and friend. It was Dr. George R. Edwards, professor of New Testament, who in 1957 arranged for me to ride with Ann Braden to Vanderbilt University Law School to hear for the first time in person Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was Martin Luther King who expressed to his audience the difference between desegregation and integration. He said, our struggle at this point was for desegregation. And later on, as we would deal with integration had to take place out of hearts, or out of loving hearts. When I graduated from seminary, it was George Edwards and his family who became members of the church, the Peace Presbyterian Church, of which I was the organizing minister and pastor. The Edwards family also lived in a neighborhood that was formerly all white, our neighborhood, segregated by our family. It was Dr. Frank Caldwell, president and professor of homiletics, who introduced me to Dr. Howard Thurman, which began a long-term friendship under his pastoral care and mentorship. In the tradition of the School of Prophets, Dr. Caldwell encourages the link between classroom theology and the public square. He encouraged faculty, seminarians, and some alumni who were present there to challenge racial segregation. When I graduated, Dr. Caldwell encouraged one of his friends of the seminary, to pay the cost of all the expenses I had incurred at the seminary. I've continued to be blessed by the support of Dr. William McAtee, seminary colleague, who encouraged and supported a church, a Westminster Church in Nelsonville, Ohio, Black congregation, to set up the Westminster Moxley Scholarship Endowment for Racial Ethnic Seminarians, and the Reverend Dr. Douglas Arbeck, who was a fieldwork student of mine and a colleague on the staff of the Senator Covenant. These students represented a genuine friendship of people who were with me then and now. Now, it is Dr. Alton Pollard III, the president of the seminary and the first African American to be so, who continues to be a friend and pastor. He is the leader God has called for this season, in the life and witness of the seminary. We share an appreciation for the pastoral and prophetic life of Howard Thurman. Oh, there is so much more that could fill a tome about the persons and people who have brought me to this place of honor. In humility and thanksgiving, I join the role of faithful stewards who have witnessed and sacrificed for truth and justice. Thanks for such an honor.
Dr. F. Morgan Roberts has a long and celebrated history with both the Presbyterian Church USA and Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Dr. Roberts is pastor emeritus of Shadyside Presbyterian Church, where he served as pastor from 1985 until his retirement in May of 1994. A widely known preacher, Dr. Roberts has served churches in New York, Kentucky, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Alabama. He is the author of Are There Horses in Heaven and Other Thoughts? In addition, he co-authored 2 books with former Louisville Seminary president John M. Mulder, 28 Hymns to Sing Before You Die and 28 Carols to Sing at Christmas. A member of the Society of Biblical Literature, he has contributed essays to several multi-volume scholarly works. Dr. Roberts has served the Presbyterian Church USA as a member of its General Assembly Mission Council. In 1986, he was preacher to the 198th General Assembly. Dr. Roberts' contribution to the life of Louisville Seminary cannot be overstated. He served on the Louisville Seminary Board of Trustees from 1970 to 2007 and is now recognized as a lifetime honorary trustee. He taught at Louisville Seminary in the 1980s and again in the early 2000s, and also served as the interim director of field education. Due to Dr. Roberts' close relationship and advocacy for Louisville Seminary's Ernest Miller White Library, the library's catalog system bears his name. Dr. Roberts' financial contributions to Louisville Seminary span more than 35 years, and he is a member of the Louisville Seminary's Caldwell Society, which honors those who have made arrangements to support the seminary through their estate plans. In 2020, Dr. Roberts was the subject of a book, Mentoring with Morgan, which was written by Louisville Seminary alum and President's Roundtable member Karen Brugler-Schlack, and includes a foreword by Louisville Seminary President Alton B. Pollard III. It is with great joy that Louisville Seminary presents the 2020 Faithful Steward Award to Dr. F. Morgan Roberts.
I am deeply grateful to be receiving this award from Louisville Seminary. I find it interesting because not only am I not a graduate of Louisville Seminary, I went instead to that other seminary in Princeton, New Jersey. But the most interesting thing about receiving this award is back when events were coming together that would connect us back in 1967, I was trying as hard as I could to stay away from Louisville. The way it happened is that I was serving a church in Mount Vernon, New York, just across the line from the borough of the Bronx. And a member of my church, unbeknown to me, told his son-in-law in Louisville, Kentucky, that he enjoyed my preaching. Well, the son-in-law was a member of Calvin Presbyterian Church, and Calvin at that time was in the process of seeking a new pastor. They didn't know anything about me, but one of the members of the committee was going to be in New York City on business, and they said, as long as you're up there, go check this guy out, listen to him preach, and report back to us. Well, he came to church, he heard me preach, we chatted for a while, and about a week later, I received a call from Calvin Church asking me to come down, preach in a neutral pulpit, and be interviewed by them. I did that, and at the end of the interview, they said, we want to call you to be our pastor. Well, I thanked them for that and said, I will go home and pray about this, think about this, and get back to you. Inwardly, I was very troubled because I couldn't see how I possibly would fit into that church. I mean, here was an all-white Southern Presbyterian church. And it was Southern to me. It's not deep South, but for me, Louisville was far away in the South. It was all white, somewhat conservative. How could I possibly fit in there? Why would they want me, a pastor of a church in a densely populated suburb of New York City, just across the line from the Bronx, 24 minutes by computer train to Grand Central Station in the center of Manhattan, and above all, a racially integrated church, 20% of whose members were African American. Well, it must have been at that point that I remembered the prophet Jonah, who was called to go where he didn't want to go. And if that's the mark of a genuine call, it must be that God was calling me to Calvin Presbyterian Church. And so I went. As I feared, I was not completely digestible, but we had a good relationship. And there were a few members of that church who long since have gone to other churches who have become lifelong friends till this day. But what I came to believe is that I had been called there really to get me to Louisville Seminary. And it happened in this way. I didn't really have a place in Calvin Church to study and prepare sermons. It was the same with the pastor before me. He had a study at home. That wouldn't work for me because I didn't have a study at home and I had 3 small children at home. So what I began to do is to go to the Louisville Seminary library, work in the main reading room, and there write my sermons. Sooner or later, Ernie White, the librarian, invited me to have a carol where I could leave my materials, and it was absolutely perfect. I had the entire seminary library at my disposal, and so every sermon I preached at Calvin Church was prepared at the seminary library. After a while, President Al Wynn got to meet me and invited me to come on the board. And thus began my 37-year relationship with Louisville Seminary. I was a good friend with all the presidents of the seminary, but the one with whom I had the closest relationship was President John Mulder. During my Michigan pastorate, John had me flying down once a week to teach a basic course on preaching and fly back in the evening. And then when the time came for my retirement, he came up with the idea of raising $500,000 to computerize the card catalog of the library and giving it the name Morgan. And then, even when that had been done, when I thought the time had come to stop working, John had me come and become a member of the faculty as interim director of field education and for one term adjunct professor of preaching. You can see how through all of these events, Louisville Seminary became my spiritual home. And of course it will be my final home when I come to rest in the memorial garden behind the chapel. And there will be just a small plaque, no degrees, no titles, just the years of my life, 1928, hopefully to 2028, and just the name Morgan. I thank you so much for this award and pray that God may continue to bless Louisville Presbyterian Seminary.
Dr. James W. Jim Tinsley is a double graduate of Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, earning his Master of Divinity degree in 1951 and his Doctor of Ministry degree in 1975. Dr. Tinsley's ministry is marked by his spirit and enthusiasm for the church, growing and planting. He accepted a call to ministry in 1954 as pastor of First Presbyterian Church in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. While there, he led the capital campaign, which funded the building of an addition to the church. From 1959 to 1979, he served as the founding pastor of Palms Presbyterian Church in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and from 1980 to 1984, Dr. Tinsley was the founding pastor of Trinity Presbyterian Church in Palm Coast, Florida. He also served in leadership roles with the Florida Synod and General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church USA, and finished his ministry by serving as a stewardship counselor for the National Presbyterian Church USA. Dr. Tinsley has been one of the most loyal donors to Louisville Seminary, having provided financial support to the seminary for at least 37 years, as far back as the seminary's fundraising database shows. But his commitment to Louisville Seminary didn't stop there. He encouraged those who showed promise for ministry to attend Louisville Seminary. Dr. Tinsley and his wife, Martha Carolyn Tinsley, established the James W. Tinsley Award, which is given to a Master of Divinity graduating student who demonstrates commitment and perseverance in preparation for pastoral ministry. Of the award, Dr. Tinsley said, "Seminary is easy for some, but it is more of a challenge for others. This is to recognize the person that, despite setbacks and challenges, succeeds in graduating." One of the last remaining Louisville Seminary alums from the class of 1951, Dr. Tinsley died on April 4, 2020. Fortunately, he knew that he was to receive the Faithful Steward Award and very much looked forward to this occasion. Accepting the Louisville Seminary Faithful Steward Award on Dr. Tinsley's behalf is Ann Monell, Louisville Seminary's Vice President for Institutional Advancement.
Hello, my name is Ann Monell, and I'm the Vice President of Institutional Advancement here at Louisville Seminary, and I'm here to say a few words on behalf of Dr. Jim Tinsley. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Tinsley just last year in December at his home in South Carolina. It was a delightful visit, and he was humbled and surprised when I told him that he was one of our most loyal donors to the seminary, if not the most loyal donor. Dr. Tinsley graduated from the seminary in 1951. And while his gifts started small when he first graduated, he continued to give year after year and decade after decade back to his seminary. In 1989, he and his wife started an award, the Jim Tinsley Award, to recognize a graduate who, because of their determination and grit, but probably not their academic powerhouse, they were able to make it through seminary. Because he said that was his experience. He wasn't the strongest student, but because of the support of faculty and other students, he was able to graduate seminary and went on to a long and fruitful ministry career. So when I called Dr. Tinsley back in February to tell him that he had been named as one of our Faithful Steward Award recipients, he was very thankful and again, humble and surprised. But it was difficult for him to get here for an award ceremony in April. Dr. Tinsley was 94 years old, didn't travel well or often. So we are working through some decisions to get his sons here or someone from his family to be here on his behalf. And then March 2020 happened and everything changed. In fact, we thought maybe this would be a blessing. We'll defer the Faithful Awards down the road to October, and maybe by that time one of his family members would be able to be on campus, or perhaps even Dr. Tinsley himself. But unfortunately, I got a call from one of his sons that on April 4th, Dr. Tinsley had passed away. I am so grateful that Dr. Tinsley knew that he was a recipient of this award. He was such a dear man and such a loyal supporter of Louisville Seminary, and it is truly my honor to receive the 2020 Faithful Steward Award on behalf of Dr. James Tinsley, Sr.
This concludes our Faithful Steward Award ceremony for 2020. We are honored by the witness, the ministries, the lives of this year's awards. We look forward to welcoming you next year for our Faithful Steward Award ceremony. Until then, be blessed.